Hey guys, welcome back to the 40 Women series. This is episode 32. I hope you're keeping well. So on today's episode, I am going to be unpacking the story of Zelophehad's daughters. I don't know why I struggle to say that long word, but it's Zelophehad. Zelophehad's. And this story can be found in Numbers chapter 27. It's a very interesting story of what happens when you stand up to what seems like unfairness, injustice. And I think it's one of those stories that reminds us as well that God is also a girl dad, apart from being a boy dad. So let's read it and let's let's chat about it. So the Bible tells us here that the daughters of Zelophehad, son of Hepher, the son of Gilead, the son of Machir, the son of Manasseh, belonged to the clans of Manasseh, son of Joseph. The names of the daughters, so these women that we're going to be talking about today, were Mala, Noah, Ogla, Milcah, and Tezah. In fact, there were actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I thought there were 4, 5. They came forward and stood before Moses, Elijah the priest, the leaders, and the whole assembly at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Can you imagine the courage and the audacity to come in front of all these men that on a normal setting can appear intimidating, can appear like, let's just tiptoe around them, but they came in front of them and they said, our father died in the wilderness. They stated their case. He was not among Korah's followers who banded together against the Lord, but he died for his own sin and left no sons. Yes, we know. Why should our father's name disappear from his clan? Because he had no son. Give us property among our father's relatives. So Moses brought their case before the Lord, and the Lord said to him, what Zelophehad's daughters are saying is right. You must certainly give them property as an inheritance among their father's relatives and give their father's inheritance to them. Say to the Israelites, if a man dies and leaves no son, give his inheritance to his daughter. If he has no daughter, give his inheritance to his brothers. If he has no brothers, give his inheritance to his father's brothers. If his father had no brothers, give his inheritance to the nearest relative in his clan, that he may possess it. This is to have the force of law for the Israelites as the Lord commanded Moses. Whew. Can you just imagine how amazing it is that because these 5 women, daughters of Zelophehad, because they dared to go and speak to the leaders or the people who made the rules about an old ancient tradition that meant an old ancient Israelite tradition that meant that only sons were supposed to inherit properties when their father dies. But these women thought to themselves, no, we can't let this happen. Our father died, yes. This happened to him, yes. But he has properties. We should be able to inherit that also. And this is where I love the phrase that I started hearing in recent times about how God is also a girl dad. You know, he's more a girl dad as he is a boy dad. And I think that this is a typical example of just God's heart towards humanity. He's not one person that stands behind, oh, only men should do this or only boys should do this. You know, he's also for women, he's also for girls. Because tell me why when these girls or these women come to speak to Moses, Moses goes to God and said, they are right. And I think it's that they are right. I want us to pause. Just because something was happening before, just because people were used to a certain tradition, a certain way of lifestyle, a certain way of culture that has been passed down, doesn't necessarily mean that it is correct. I think sometimes when we read the scriptures, we see certain things that happen. We see conversations between people doing evil and wickedness. And a lot of times we kind of attribute it to the fact that, oh, maybe this is God because this happened. There are quite a number of things that happens to scriptures that is not necessarily because shouldn't necessarily be attributed to God. So just because you see a terrible situation happen, somebody killed somebody, it doesn't then mean that you say, oh, this is a law or this is a precedent. It's not always a precedent. It should just merely be a story that's unfolding, and God is even pointing the light to the hearts of the people that are involved in that story. So why do I find the story of Zelophehad's daughters, why do I find it inspiring? I find it inspiring because I also am naturally somebody who wants to shake norms and shake things that people are used to, not from a rebellious point of view, but also to bring light to things that people are doing that is not necessarily correct, that is not necessarily the heart of God. And so I love the audacity, I love the courage with which this woman went. I'm sure that it wasn't a normal thing at the time for women to just step into these places and just start stating their case. I also commend the fact that Moses was willing to listen to them and take back what they had said to God. And God was like, they are right. And I think this encourages us that we too can stand up for the truth. We can stand up for old age traditions or cultures or things that have now been normalized in society that is not correct. We don't have to sit down and fold our arms just because we're afraid. The Bible says that the righteous are as bold as a lion. Of course, this does not mean that we should sin in the process of trying to correct things, influence a change, or be a catalyst of change. It means that we too can stand firm and make a change in certain areas when we feel like those things are wrong. This is why I love this story. And can you imagine, because of the confidence, because of the audacity, because of the courage that this woman had, a whole lot was changed. God said, in fact, moving forward, when fathers die, if they don't have sons, the daughters are next inherited. After the daughters, then brothers, and he set a precedent for how things will go moving forward. And this is a typical example of how, as women, you shouldn't allow the fact that you're a girl, the fact that you're a lady, you shouldn't allow that to stop you from challenging things that seem wrong. You can in a way that it is godly, approach setting norms, setting injustice, setting unfairness, things that are unrighteous, things that are not the heart of God. We can challenge them. There is nothing wrong in standing up for what you believe to be true. I think that in this day and age where some people want to shut women down, keep them quiet, keep them silent, they have a playbook and a rule for what they think women should be like. The examples of these 5 daughters tells us that God welcomes challenge. He welcomes poking into structures that appear wrong. He welcomes poking into things to make a change for the general benefit for a group of people who wouldn't have benefited if you didn't stand up for that. So what is our takeaway today from this story? The takeaway is that when you are in situations or places, or even a church, it could be at work, it could be at home, we can stand up to things that we believe are not right, and we can challenge it. We can say, I don't believe that this should be true. And God will use those moments. He will use those instances to bring about change, to bring about things that are positive for the general benefit of people who were not able to benefit from that if we didn't stand up. So I hope this story encourages you as a woman in these times to recognize that your voice is important. When you see things that are not correct, you can challenge them and you can ask questions. Keeping quiet has not helped anybody. Imagine the flip side of things. If these women accepted their fate, they would lose out. A whole bunch of other people would lose out from inheriting properties when fathers die. All right, guys, see you in the next episode. Let me know what you think about the 5 daughters. God bless you. Bye.